welcome back to Overbooked. I'm Amanda, and today we're gonna be talking about my March and April reads. I have found that doing monthly reading wrap-ups was just kind of a lot to try to do on top of school and work, and I was just getting too stressed, so I kind of like this whole lumping 2 months into one video. So we're gonna just keep going, and I'm just enjoying the vibe. Let's get into the books, and we'll just get into it. We'll get into it. The first book that I read in March, or finished reading, I guess, in March, was Homegoing by Ya Agassi. I've actually already read this book before. I read this back in 2019, something like that. Really enjoyed it then. I really enjoyed it now. So I read this for a book club with my family members that I do. There was mixed reactions, which is okay, which is expected with a book club, but I give it 5 stars. So that's mine. Homegoing is about 2 sisters who are born in Africa at the start of the slave trade, and then one of them gets sold into slavery in America, and the other one is left in Africa. And it's spanning a multi-generational story, so you get to see the repercussions of each sister's placement in the world, essentially, through their following generations. And it's just a fascinating story of circumstance and just how sweeping family traits can be and are carried through. And I just really loved how Ya Agassi set up this book, because every other chapter you're looking at the other sister's family and it's the next generation. And it was just really fascinating how she set it up, because there was just all these minor connections between the two, but obviously the 2 relations that are being discussed have no idea and have no concept of the other family member that's across the ocean. And it's just, I don't know, I thought it was beautifully well done. Is that a word? I thought it was extremely well done. I thought it was a beautiful story. I just really loved it, and it just has such a beautiful ending. I just cannot recommend this book enough. 5 stars. The next book I read was Take My Hand by Dolan Perkins Valdez. I don't know, I saw this book a lot on Bookstagram, and that's kind of why I picked it up. I didn't really have it as something that I was gonna pick up. I thought it was a good story. I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't say it was knocked my socks off, But I do think, I will say, I think it's a very important story to tell and to learn about. And I think this would be a really great book club discussion book. I think there's a lot to discuss. There's a lot of connections to history, so on and so forth. The book follows our main character, who is a Black nurse in the late 60s or the mid 60s. And she works at this clinic, a family planning clinic, and she's helping getting birth control into the hands of women in the community, specifically more targeted towards low-income Black women. It's kind of showing you how some of these women didn't really know what they were getting themselves into or agreeing to when they were taking this birth control, or there was some cases where there was women who they consented to having surgery to not have children ever again, and they didn't really know what they were signing the rights away to. This nurse in the story looks specifically at 2 young girls who are 12 and something that's younger than 12. They have a surgery where and I can't remember, I feel I should know because I'm a woman. They have surgery where it removes their ability to have children, and they're so young. And the whole point of it, the clinic's aspect is to really prevent them from getting pregnant, because they believe that they're probably partaking in sex, which is ludicrous because they're 12, but whatever. So we follow the story of this nurse, taking this clinic to the court and taking this case all the way to the Supreme Court and fighting for justice for these girls, and just highlighting the story of what was happening during this time. And it's also during a time where the Tuskegee experiment, the syphilis experiment that was happening on Black men, that had just happened, that had just occurred, and now they're in this situation. So they feel like they need to fight this, that they feel like it's an injustice, which it definitely is. It's a fictional account based on some loose real events that occurred. I thought it was well done. I liked it. I don't know what it was. I felt the same about this book as I did Yellow Wife. I thought that they were really good stories. I just didn't super love the book. It couldn't connect to it a ton. I just didn't find myself wanting to pick it back up. I know for a fact that Bookstagram loves this book. There are other people that love this book, so I think you should check it out for yourself, because I think it is a great story. The next book I read was Fixer Up by Tessa Bailey, and I have a whole 45-minute rant review on this, so I'm not even gonna say anything except that I did not like this book. Very, very much did not like this book. 1 star, didn't like this book. Hated it, actually. Hear about it in my rant review. The next book I read was Love Her or Lose Her by Tessa Bailey. So this is the next book in the fixer-up, like, romance world. I also didn't like this one. I almost wanted to just, halfway through this book, I was like, I need to do another rant review, but I didn't because I couldn't even, my brain would hurt, I think. But I am gonna try to see this series through because my friend Miranda read it, and I do think maybe the last one will be redeeming because there's banter, and I love a good banter in a romance book. But Love Her or Lose Her is about some characters that we're introduced to in Fixer Up, and it's like one of the friends, and it's about her marriage and how her marriage is kind of falling apart. It's gone to the point where she's just gonna leave. And so the husband has to like figure out how to, you know, get her back. And so to do this, they both like go into like marriage counseling, and they go through all these exercises to kind of get their marriage back on track. It was fine. I just like, again, I think I had the same kind of problems that I had for like Fixer Up. The misogyny is unreal. I almost think it gets too unreal in this one. There's one point in the book where just a bunch of girls go out to the club, girls' night, and the men in the book, who are their like these women's significant others, or have some romantic interest connected to these women, cannot fathom the fact that these women are out by themselves and that they have the potential to see other men. Other men will see them. They can't compute. Like, they are shutting down. Like, the computer is fizzing out, there's a fire, they can't handle it. They can't process this information. So they have to like go to the club, obviously. And it like kind of ruins girls' night. Like, it's like, what the hell is this? I didn't have a girls' night for my husband to show up. Bye, leave. So there's just like a lot of that throughout the book. The sex scenes they're hot, they're steamy, but they're cringe. At the same time, there's cringe. I could be reading fanfic and be getting the same kind of result. Yeah, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy the vibes. I didn't love it. Wow, it just got dark. Sun, come back. Then I went on a road trip to see my friend get her PhD. Well, technically she didn't get her PhD, but she defended her thesis to receive her PhD, and she did an amazing job. And I love it. So I had to go on a road trip to see her do this. So I thought I would read the book or listen to the book, Don't Make Me Pull Over, An Informal History of the Family Road Trip by Richard Rotte. So this has been on my want to read list on Goodreads for like ever. And I thought, like, why not a better time to read this than now? You know, it's like only a 9-hour audiobook. I actually kind of want to do a little rant review on this one. Not as long, definitely not as long, definitely not as in-depth because I don't have any notes. But I didn't like this book at all. I gave it 2 stars. What I really wanted was, I think, what he gave for half of the book, which is kind of a history of the road trip in America. Like, how the road trip came to be such an Americana experience and how, you know, that disappeared. He gave that briefly. Like, he talked about the development of roads and how the development of hotels and fast food establishments, because those are all crucial to the Americana road trip, right? Like, you need to pull over to grab McDonald's, you need to stay over in a hotel, and you need like an actual highway system to go on a road trip. Talked about some of like cons to all of these and yada yada. But what I didn't like about Richard's book, and I feel like I can call him Richard, we're on that kind of, you know, level. He just was too relaxed. Like, he was too informal. And maybe that's why I feel comfortable calling him Richard. Like, he just like was speaking to me like I was his young whippersnapper kid, and I, you know, had no concept of anything. I also feel like I was not the target audience for this. You know, he really uses this book to get real deep into his nostalgia for the good old days of the 70s when he would go on road trips with his family, which I get, right? But I was not alive during the 70s, so I don't care. And I do understand some of the references that he's making, but I don't have any connection to them, so I feel nothing when he talks about it. I think that he just had too much of like personal stories and anecdotes. Like, there was just a lot of description of how his family road trips were. He got really in depth about like his family members. Like, it was like a character description on Spark Notes of each of his family members, and I just didn't care that much. I think like it was like really cute when he started out the book that way, you know, the first chapter, but I think, you know, he did that throughout the entire book. That's like 50% of the book is just him talking about road trips with his family. And that's just not what I was looking for. And a lot of it was repeated information. I just thought that like he probably could have done a little bit more research and added a little bit more, like, and I'm sure he did a ton of research, but added more insight that he gleaned from that research and less like anecdotes and stuff from his own personal experience on the road trip. But yeah, I think I want to do a whole separate video on this because I just have a lot of thoughts and feelings on it, and it just like really annoyed me. So I also joined a book club at my work because I love being a networking bitch and just kind of getting out there. What better way to network than do what I love? And that is reading and book clubs. I did it. I joined the book club. I went to it yesterday. Yep, yesterday. And no one was there. Well, so it was supposed to be in person, and it was a hybrid event, and I showed up in person thinking there was going to be like, 5 of us there. And it was just me and one other chick, and then we just looked at the screen at everybody else. The book that we talked about was Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. And I've read Red of the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson, which I really, really enjoyed. And I think I've read Brown Girl Dreaming like when I was younger, like when I was a kid, because I think this has been out for a very long time. So this is like a middle grade YA book, which I think is fine. I will say, I don't know if this was a great book club pick. I think the intention behind picking was really great. Jacqueline Woodson was actually at an event that my work sponsored. I think everyone in the crowd got a copy of the book. I think that made sense, right? Like that was the connection that whoever ran the book club made to picking this book. But I don't think there's maybe a lot of really conversation stuff that you can glean, or discussion stuff you can glean from this book. Brown Girl Dreaming is kind of like a memoir-ish poetry collection for Jacqueline Woodson. It's like about her as a child going through, her life and growing up, finding her identity, discovering who she is, discovering how she loves writing, moving from Ohio to South Carolina and then to New York, and going through her parents' divorce and living with her grandparents and all of that stuff. It's a lovely, lovely book. I think it's really nice. I think it's really well done. And we talked a lot in my book club about identity, how you find that. And I think Jacqueline really explores that because she's obviously a child discovering herself and who she is. And that's what this book is about. And it's kind of like a refreshing book to read as an adult, because I think you're always trying to seek who you are and what your identity is. And it's kind of always shifting depending on what phase of life you're in. So I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. You guys, after months, and I'm talking months, not just 2 months, but months, multiple months of being on hold at the library for not only the audiobook, the ebook, and the physical copy all at once. I had all of them at once. I finally got my hands on Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Levin. And let me tell you, Zevin, sorry. Let me tell you, it was worth it. It was worth it. I understand why it's such a long hold. This book was so good. Hot damn, I loved it a lot. Oh my God, this book is so good. This is my kind of book, contemporary, literary, a little bit of romance, just so much. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow is about 2 friends who meet at a hospital when they're kids. The male main character is in the hospital because he was in a car accident and his foot got smashed, so he's in there trying to re-put together his foot, essentially. And then the girl main character is in there because her sister has cancer. So they're just in this hospital essentially all the time. She comes upon him one day in this game room and he's playing games, and they end up they just start talking and chatting. One of the nurses on duty is like, "Oh my gosh, you were talking to," I forgot his name, Frank. And she's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "He hasn't talked in months since he got here." She was the first person he talked to. He was so traumatized after the accident, he didn't talk to anybody. So that kind of starts their friendship. They have a conflict that happens when they're kids, and they don't talk until they're in college, and they stumble upon each other. And that's when their lifelong friendship just really kicks off. And they decide to make video games together, and they go through so much. And it's truly, and I hate this phrase, but they go through ups and downs, and through it all, it's they're always a constant in each other's lives. I just thought this was such a beautiful, just amazing book. I think it really shows how some friendships just kind of operate and how sometimes they can go wrong, right? I think there's a lot of times where in the book, the main issue they had in their friendship was they just weren't communicating to each other. They weren't really telling each other the truth of how they really were feeling or what was really going on. And I think that happens a lot in real life, where you just don't want to be a burden to somebody, and you just love your friend so much, right? And you want them in your life so much that you think that by not telling them everything, it will make them stay. But in reality, it doesn't. I think Gabrielle Zevin did a great job of showcasing that kind of, just the small nuances in a friendship that may seem small, but actually lead to sometimes a friendship's demise. And I just thought it was just great. I just really thought it was good. finally, the book that I finished just today, just this morning. We're finishing book queen. We finish books around here. So I finished Hunger, A Memoir of My Body by Roxane Gay. I've read Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay, and I really loved it. You know, I've had Hunger on my list for a long time. Friend Danielle, if you're watching this, Danielle, shout out. If you're watching this, Danielle, leave a comment below. So my friend Danielle told me that she was reading it for a book club, and she showed up to that book club and no one read it. And she was the only one that did. But she really wanted to talk to somebody about it. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna read it. And it was like a really short audiobook, and it was really, really good. This is a really, really amazing memoir. Like I think I gave it like 5 stars for sure. Roxane Gay just really gets into how her life has been being a fat woman, a Black woman, and someone who has been a victim of sexual assault. I think it was just a really important perspective and story to tell. Like, it's really hard to hear and listen to at some points because what Roxane Gay goes through is terrible, and she's not holding back. She is being extremely transparent. She is telling you everything. Really admire her honesty, her just showing it all, like just telling us what it is. And, you know, she contributes her body and her fatness to her trying to protect herself since she was assaulted so young. And her solution to that was to make herself less desirable so it doesn't happen again. And now she's kind of in this place where she can't really like get out of that state of mind. You know, just kind of going back and forth with this and trying to struggle with what happened with her body, people's perception of her. And it was just, you know, I just really, really appreciated her words and her telling us her story. And I think it just has a lot to tell about how society views women's bodies, especially women of color's bodies, and how they view our bodies is how they judge us. I think that we all struggle with our own image, and no matter what size we are, we're always stuck in this like state of mind of trying to fit some sort of expectation of what we're supposed to look like. I think that there's a lot of work being done right with society right now where we're trying to fight that, like with body positivity and body acceptance and yada yada yada, all of those movements. But I think there's always, I think it's just gonna be a really, really hard thing to turn over, make the norm of just kind of like, you don't need to fit your body to any sort of expectation that society may put on you. So I just thought it was a really great book. I'm really excited to talk about it. I highly recommend. It was a super short audiobook. I recommend the audiobook. Roxane Gay reads it herself. It was lovely. Those were all the books I read in March and April. In the comments below, let me know if you've read any of these, if you want to read any of these, what you've been reading lately. I would love to hear it. And as always, give me a thumbs up if you like this video and subscribe if you have not already. And I will see you guys next time.